Well, guys, it was definitely a difficult day for Williams. Luke, I can see you rubbing your hands together there.
Oh, yes.
What on earth happened? Talk to us about it. Obviously, both drivers were okay. That's the most important thing. But Luke, what happened?
Obviously, George Russell was gaining on Valtteri Bottas, trying to make a move for P9. Bottas had a really terrible race. I don't think there's any other way to put it. Russell went for the overtake, moved to the right-hand side as they were coming down towards that first chicane, hit a wet patch, and that caused him to lose control. His car then sped to the left, straight into Valtteri Bottas's car. It eliminated both cars on the spot and were at a red flag. And then we quickly saw both drivers were okay. Russell hopped out of his car. He went straight over to Valtteri Bottas's cockpit and gave a very Italian hand gesture, and then gave him a little slap on the helmet as well. Bottas then responded by flipping the bird, and I said in my headline that Bottas pointed the finger at Russell for the incident, and that was meant one finger in particular. And it's been in these post-race media sessions that we've actually got more and more sort of flesh on the bone to it. And Russell, he came out and said that he apparently went over to Bottas and said, "Are you trying to kill both of us?" He said that Bottas broke a gentleman's agreement in that when you're going at that speed, apparently you should stick entirely to your line. He said that Bottas moved slightly to the right. That then caused him to juke off to the right and caused the crash. Bottas said that wasn't the case at all. He didn't do that. And then when the stewards investigated it and took no further action, deeming it to be a racing incident, they too said that Bottas maintained his line throughout the corner. And the really interesting part of all of it was a line that George Russell gave, saying perhaps if it was another driver, he wouldn't have, meaning defended so aggressively. So that's what went through my mind at the moment. So as if to say, look, if this is the guy who's going to possibly replace me at Mercedes next year, I better be a bit more aggressive with my defending as opposed to anybody else. And it's something I put to Toto Wolff, and he was like, wait, what? And I had to sort of say the quote back to him, and he just turned and went, that's bullshit. And Toto was really unhappy, and he said that while he wouldn't apportion 100% of the blame to anybody, it was pretty clear that to him, George was the man who was at fault. He said that Russell's got lots to learn. He said that he should have approached it differently, knowing it's a Mercedes car ahead because he's a Mercedes driver. He said it shouldn't have gone for an overtake where he went for the overtake. Said he's going to go and talk with him. Bottas, he was also asked about Russell's idea, and he said, I must have lost my aluminium foil hat somewhere. It's quite a theory. And again, just said that he would have defended the same to anybody. And but then Russell, he was asked about his comments, and he said, it's pretty clear what I intended and what I meant by those comments. So he didn't even dial it back in as some sort of drivers tend to do when they realise in the heat of the moment they've said something. He stuck to his guns. So I'm loving it. And George has said that he wants to give Bottas a phone call to kind of clear the air a little bit. Bottas has said he's an easygoing guy. He said, I'm not friends with George, but I'm not friends with any of the drivers. So it's okay. There's no issues or anything like that. But when we are sort of talking in the context of 2022, who's going to take that Mercedes seat, this is such a huge moment, and it's so exciting. I love it, and thank God they are both okay. That's the main thing. But it's just such a spicy storyline to get us going, I think, as we head into the rest of the season. And we've got another, 21 races potentially where we can have these two sort of duking it out, maybe. It's great. So great.
On Sky afterwards, Toto said something which it was a flippant comment and meant in jest, which obviously means that it'll be taken out of context and go around the cheap websites as nailed on thunder from the Sky, where he said that, this was the chance for these guys to help me decide whether to place them in the Mercedes or in the Renault Clio Cup next year. And guess who's going to the Renault Clio Cup was more or less what he said. So, yes, we could expect to read more on that in the following days.
Codders, I will read you a headline from a website which is not Autosport or anyone associated with us. Toto Wolff threatens George Russell with Renault Clio Cup demotion. That's a genuine headline to me.
I feel like there is so much to unpick in this situation. Jess, we'll start with you. Do you think that it was one person's fault more than the other, first of all?
I think that this is a far more complex question than what you're asking, because firstly, what the hell is a Mercedes doing battling a Williams in the first place?
On Twitter, you blame George. You can't change your position now. That's suggesting you're lying.
I'm bringing out the receipts.
Oh, gosh, jeez. Podders is here to level us all. No, you're right. I think of everybody, I think, if we're going to apportion blame, then probably I would say George. I actually found it incredible how many people immediately wanted to blame Bottas. And when I did tweet that and said, look, to me, that looks like that was George who is primarily at fault here, even though it was obviously decided that it was a racing incident, which I think is probably fair. Everybody was going, no, Bottas jerked to the right. He jerked to the right. And I just couldn't believe, I was like, am I watching the same onboards as you guys? Because yes, okay, there's a twitch, right? But Bottas is taking the racing line and the dry line, and George decides to go outright. There's a slight twitch. George overcorrects massively in response to that, out of fear. I mean, I probably would too if I was going that fast down the straight and somebody's weaving to the right to me. Wasn't weaving, slight twitch. But plenty of space. There's probably room for 3 cars, the amount of room that Bottas left him. So I just don't think if we're going to start playing the blame game, I don't think any of it can be given to Bottas personally, apart from the fact that Mercedes shouldn't have been there in the first place. Yeah, for me, it was a case of immaturity on Russell's part. I mean, ballsy. He didn't pull it off. Very lucky that none of them ended up hurt. It was a horrific crash to see on the replays. And I just don't buy it, George. I'm sorry. I think it was a silly move. You didn't pull it off. You ended up in the wall. And again, Imola, no points for George.
People are trying to draw a straight line along a straight that is not straight. The approach to Tamburello kinks twice, particularly, and it does noticeably go left just in what you might call the braking area after the pit exit. And so the onboard from Russell's car made it look that as if Bottas was running him out of road, when maybe actually that wasn't really what was happening. It was just the natural curvature of the track made it look like Bottas was putting him off at 200 miles an hour. So I can understand why a lot of people would instantly leap to George's defence. But yeah, I think all in all, it's a good thing that these things are decided by the stewards and not by a shouting match on Twitter.
And what do you guys make of that comment that George made about the fact that if it had maybe been another driver, Bottas would have responded differently? Do you think George is reaching a bit there and maybe just getting a bit carried away?
I mean, I can't wait to see how much of a big deal Netflix make out of this. But yeah, I think it's going to make a great episode. And we're only in the second round of the season. So yeah, it's going to be a great narrative, but I just don't buy it. Bottas is under pressure, no doubt about it. And this race could not have gone worse for him. The results were bad. His qualifying was poor. He's struggling where Hamilton is excelling. And, how much longer can Mercedes keep George at bay? Not for much longer. And they're going to have a real good excuse to say why. I mean, obviously they're still in control here. The drivers don't get to do too much of the dictating in terms of teams, but they also will not want George to go looking elsewhere and sniffing elsewhere because he is still a great talent. But I don't buy it. I don't buy that, Bottas is a really level-headed driver. As we said, he's not particularly friends with any of the other drivers because he's just there to race and get on with what he can do. Now, whether that was enough today, no. In my opinion, but I don't have him down as this calculated, right, I'm going to shove George and cause a collision. I just don't buy it, which is why I'm actually quite disappointed with George. But this is the thing about Formula One. It's not all about what goes on track. It's about your value. What value do you have? Your stocks, basically. How can you play the game? Because this is very much like a chess game. What move are you going to do next to ensure that your career has longevity, to ensure you get in the best team with the best car so that you have the best chance of winning championships? And, whilst I'm not saying that George is this evil, conniving, scheming driver, I think there are going to be frustrations there as to why he would want that narrative to play out. So, yeah, don't buy it. Sorry.